9 wrestlers who killed people. Number 9. Akitoshi Sato. Mitsuharu Misawa was one of the biggest legends in Japanese wrestling and a staple of promotions such as All Japan Pro Wrestling and Pro Wrestling Noah. Due to many years of competing at the highest level in very physical and hard-hitting matches, Misawa's body was in really poor condition by the time he wrestled Akitoshi Sato on the 13th of June 2009 in Pro Wrestling Noah. Misawa fell unconscious after a backdrop suplex from Sato. After noticing that Misawa was not getting up, the match was immediately stopped and Misawa was rushed to the hospital where he was pronounced dead within hours. Mitsuharu Misawa died at the age of 46. The Japanese legend, however, expected that something like this might happen. 2 years before his death, Misawa wrote a letter addressed to his last opponent in case he died in the ring. In the letter, Misawa apologized for betraying the trust of his opponent and expressed that he should not feel guilty. Akitoshi Sato continued to wrestle after the incident, keeping the letter in his bag for every show. Number 8. Brian McGee. Most wrestling fans might not be familiar with this name, but those who follow WWE's developmental system might recognize his ring names: The Future, Donovan Ruddock, or D.T. Porter. On the 24th of July 2013, 29-year-old McGee killed his 25-year-old girlfriend, Bianca McGoffey. A witness saw McGee walking up to McGoffey's apartment, where it appeared that she was punched in the stomach. The witness then ran to call for help. When the witness returned, it was already too late, as McGoffey had been stabbed with a knife and was dying at the scene. McGee fled in a Pontiac Grand Prix and was arrested after a car chase and subsequent car crash. McGee confessed to the murder while talking to his mother and sister on the phone. He confessed to the heinous crime a second time after a police officer took over his sister's phone. Number 7. Jimmy Snuka. Jimmy Snuka's case is one of the more contentious ones on this list because it also involves a wrestler being held responsible for his girlfriend's death. Snuka was one of the top stars of Vince McMahon's WWF in 1983 and had legendary moments and feuds like his rivalry with Roddy Piper and a steel cage match against Bob Backlund in Madison Square Garden. Snuka and his girlfriend, Nancy Argentino, were staying in a motel on May 10, 1983. When Snuka returned to the motel, Argentino was injured and had trouble breathing. She died after a few hours due to traumatic brain injuries at the age of 23. What makes this especially controversial is the fact that no charges were filed against Snuka despite the autopsy report showing signs of foul play, among other suspicious details. There is a lot more to this case, but to not overextend this entry, we try to keep it short. The case was reopened in 2015, but Snuka was deemed unable to stand trial because of his dementia and stomach cancer. Snuka passed away in 2017 from his terminal illness. Tamina, Snuka's daughter, is currently a WWE wrestler. His son also wrestled for WWE in the past as Deuce of the Deuce and Domino tag team. Number 6. Jose Gonzalez. On July 16, 1988, popular hardcore wrestler Bruiser Brody was scheduled for a match in the Puerto Rican promotion of the World Wrestling Council. Before the match, Jose Gonzalez, known under the ring name Invader No. 1, asked Brody to step into the shower with him to discuss something. Nobody knew what exactly happened in the shower, but screams were heard. Tony Atlas was the first to enter the scene, where he saw Brody holding his stomach and Gonzalez holding a knife. It was known before this incident that Brody and Gonzalez did not like each other. After the incident in the shower, there was complete chaos in the locker room. Unfortunately, there was also chaos out on the streets, which resulted in paramedics taking nearly an hour to arrive. Bruiser Brody died later that night at the age of 44. Gonzalez got away with all this, pleading self-defense. Witnesses such as Tony Atlas and Dutch Mantell were notified about the Gonzalez trial only after it had taken place, leaving no one on behalf of Brody to take part in the trial. Number 5. Vern Gagne. The former owner and promoter of the AWA promotion, based in Minneapolis, is another legendary figure in the world of wrestling. He held multiple championships, and his AWA promotion was one of the hottest at the time, featuring stars such as Nick Bockwinkel and a young Hulk Hogan. On January 26, 2009, Gagne got into an altercation with Helmut Gutmann, a 97-year-old resident of the Bloomington, Minnesota nursing care facility where they both resided. This altercation led to Gagne slamming Gutmann to the floor and breaking his hip by pulling back on his body. Gutmann died almost a month later from complications of his injury. No one knows what originally led to the altercation between the two, and even though the case was ruled a homicide, Gagne, who was 82 years old at the time, was not criminally charged due to his dementia. Gagne died on April 27, 2015, of natural causes at the age of 89. Number 4. The Great Khali. The Great Khali is most known for his time in WWE and is one of the biggest stars in India. He is a former World Heavyweight Champion and had feuds with legends like The Undertaker and Batista. Khali actually wrestled before his time in WWE, starting in the year 2000 for the APW promotion. This is where Khali, who was still inexperienced and spoke little English at the time, trained with fellow wrestler Brian Ong. On the 28th of May 2001, Khali wanted to practice a spine buster or flapjack-like move and was paired with Ong. During practice, Ong landed on his tailbone with his head whipping back against the mat. It did not take long before it was clear that something was wrong. Ong tried to get out of the ring on all fours, vomited, and then collapsed. Ong was brought to the hospital, where he was pronounced dead on arrival. The official cause of death is acute and subdural hemorrhage as a result of head trauma. Brian Ong was only 27 years old. Number 3. Ox Baker. On June 13, 1971, in Verdig, Nebraska, a tag team match took place that would end in tragedy. In that match, Baker delivered his famous signature heart punch to one of his opponents, Alberto Torres, who died 3 days later. Promoters at the time said it was the heart punch that contributed to Torres' death, probably to make Baker and his heart punch seem especially dangerous, but it was later revealed that Torres died from complications of pancreatitis that developed before the match. Unfortunately, Baker's heart punch became even more infamous as Torres was not the only wrestler to pass away after receiving it. On August 1, 1972, Baker wrestled Ray Gunkel. During the match, Gunkel was also punched in the heart, but actually went on to win the match against Baker. He later collapsed in the locker room and died. The autopsy report showed that Gunkel had underlying coronary artery disease, and it remains controversial how heart attacks contributed to his passing. Baker passed away on October 20, 2014, from cardiovascular disease. Number 2. Scott Hall. Scott Hall, aka Razor Ramon, is probably one of the better known wrestlers on this list. He achieved great success in the WWF and the WCW, taking part in the legendary ladder match at WrestleMania 10 against Shawn Michaels and forming the New World Order alongside Kevin Nash and Hulk Hogan. Before his wrestling career, Hall worked as a bartender in a Florida nightclub called the Original Dollhouse. On January 15, 1983, Hall got into a heated dispute with a patron over a woman. After the dispute, said patron went to the parking lot to smash the windows of Hall's car. Hall attacked the man, wrestling him to the ground. The man then pulled a firearm, and Hall was also reaching for it. Hall actually managed to take the gun from him and proceeded to shoot the man in the head, killing him instantly. Hall was on trial for second-degree murder, but eventually the case was dropped due to lack of evidence. In order to cope with his traumatic experience, Hall medicated himself, turning to drugs and alcohol for the years to come. The wrestling legend Scott Hall sadly passed away at the age of 63 on March 14, 2022, from a blood clot following a broken hip. Number 1. Chris Benoit. Maybe the most infamous, controversial, and saddest incident in wrestling history is the double murder committed by Chris Benoit. Benoit, who was beloved by fans due to his technical prowess and hard-hitting in-ring style, was supposed to wrestle at a PPV and win the ECW World Heavyweight Championship, but he never showed up. Benoit did the unthinkable in June 2007, killing his wife Nancy and his 7-year-old son Daniel before ending his own life. Autopsy reports indicated that both Nancy and Daniel passed away due to asphyxiation. There aren't really reasons or explanations for why Benoit did what he did. However, subsequent investigations revealed Benoit's deteriorating mental health, which appeared to be caused by severe chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, steroids, and alcohol abuse, among other factors. Never before was the wrestling world shocked in such a gruesome way, and questions arose about WWE's drug and health policies. Benoit was erased from WWE history and, understandably, was never mentioned again by the company until this day. Yet some fans still argue that Chris Benoit should be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame for his accomplishments in the ring.